Welcome to the Cat Cave. Whether you're in North or South Carolina or anywhere else in the world, enter the Cat Cave with Michael Davis and Ryan Frick to listen to your favorite Carolina Panthers podcast. We're part of the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network, the same place that brings you Believe in Panthers, same place that brings you Embrace Debate, and it brings in Michael Davis. It brings in your guy, Bully Ryan Frick. Ryan, how are you doing? Yesterday was the 4th of July.
Yeah, man. It was a good time. Got to go out and get in the pool and eat some good food, hang out with some good friends. So it was a good time, man. I'm ready to be here. It's been a couple weeks. I had a work conference last week, and off the air, I was telling you it did not end well from a perspective of trying to get home. So if you've been watching the news and seeing about the flight cancellations and delays, I was one of those unfortunate souls that had to deal with that. So I'm glad to be here.
Where all did you travel? Like, where all did you get stuck?
So, man, I was supposed to go to Chicago to get to LAX, and that flight got delayed, and I was able to rebook that flight, no issues. So I flew through Houston on the way out there, and then I was supposed to fly through Houston on the way back. I was supposed to do nothing. I did. And my flight from LAX to Houston got delayed so bad that I missed my connecting flight. And then 3 hours in a customer service line with United Airlines that put me in a hotel in a bad part of town without a working elevator and air conditioning that was on. And then the next day, we got on the plane after another 4-hour delay that turned into almost a flight cancellation. I've already said the long story of it. I was supposed to be home around 10 o'clock Thursday night. I did not get home until Saturday at 2:30 in the morning. So it was a long few days. Let's just say that. And listen, it could have been worse. I talked to a kid in Houston that had been stuck in that airport for 3 days, and they weren't giving him any sort of hotel vouchers or anything.
Really?
So yeah. I mean, we were all around him. Like, we were all surprised because the second thing they gave me after my seat assignment for my flight on Friday was a hotel voucher. Now, granted, it wasn't in a great part of town, but I was genuinely surprised, as everybody else was, that he didn't get a voucher. So we were all basically saying, I hope you keep your receipts from whatever hotel you're staying in, because I'd be sending that to United. And I thought the girl that sat next to me on my flight said that she had to deal with something like that with Southwest, where she had to go get a hotel a few months, a while back. And it took Southwest Airlines 8 months to give her reimbursement for everything that she spent when she got stuck.
Wow.
So this kid that has been paying for himself in a hotel room for 3 days, I'm sure is going to be looking at a year before he ever sees any of that money again. So like I said, it could have been worse. It could have been better. But now I'm blessed to be back here sitting with you with that ugly mug. I'm kidding. I'm talking about my own, actually. So
whoa. If that was Friday, that'd be called out of pocket.
Yeah. I turned it around on me. It's self-deprecating jokes. It's a defense mechanism for insecurity. Again, let's get into some Panthers talk, man.
Yeah, this isn't our podcast where we moan and groan about our insecurities that we have.
Yeah, this isn't a psychology podcast, so we're not here to talk about our issues. We're here to talk about the
Carolina Panthers issues.
The Carolina Panthers, exactly.
We'll talk about the Panthers issues today. And you talked about maybe like longer days than you expected. Well, the summer months are always like longer days without football. We're just counting down. This is actually, fun fact, the last full month without football until March of next year. So let's get hyped. Let's get excited. And I bring up this question because, ever since the draft, everything just kind of like dies out until you get back to football. And the Carolina Panthers traded up number 1 to get Bryce Young. And there are high expectations for him right out the gate. He's going to be the starting quarterback for the Panthers. He's taking the first team reps with the team in practice right now. Like, it's going to be his team week 1. And he's going to have to prove to the fans that they made the right decision in drafting him over a guy like CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson. I know how much you love Richardson, so I had to throw him in there. But that's a lot of pressure week 1. And a couple nights ago, we saw the Hornets, who selected number 2 overall, Brandon Miller. He didn't do too well. He kind of recovered in the second half, but if the first half was a real NBA game, he would have fouled out by halftime with points and 6 fouls. And so now Hornets fans in Charlotte are like, did they make the right decision? When it comes to the Panthers and Bryce Young having the weight of this state on his back, what's the pressure of him being number 1? And do you have high expectations for him his rookie year or his first overall season?
I mean, first of all, I don't want to get right into Bryce Young yet. You mentioned Brandon Miller and the Charlotte Hornets. I think the reason why people have trepidation about Brandon Miller is because he gave a gun to a friend who went and used it to kill somebody. I think that's the reason why people have trepidation about Brandon Miller, because there has been no. I mean, I don't think they've arrested. I'm not sure if they've arrested him or if he's dealt with any legal troubles, but he could be sued as part of a wrongful death lawsuit. And so that's just a bad light shown on your organization. As far as Bryce Young goes, listen, he was the number 1 overall pick in the draft. We've been talking about it for weeks now that there was a while that we're saying Andy Dalton was the number 1, and you saw them slowly move and inch Bryce Young into the 1 spot until they finally said he's our number 1 through the spring. So he will be the week 1 starter. I don't think there are expectations that we want to see Bryce Young as a Pro Bowl quarterback in his first year. But I think you definitely expect him to be in the talks for the offensive rookie of the year. We've talked about the fact that the Panthers were 1 win away from being a playoff team last year. And then they turn around and get the number 1 pick in the draft and use it on Bryce Young. They got the guy they wanted, right? I think there are possibly – this is going to be hard to say because, again, he was the number 1 pick in the draft. I think there's sort of maybe higher expectations on a CJ Stroud or an Anthony Richardson, because both of those teams that they went to, the Texans and the Colts, were essentially terrible. I mean, outside of Jonathan Taylor, you can't I don't think you can name anybody else on that Colts offense. I couldn't name you one guy outside. Is it Damian Williams, Damian Pierce?
Oh,
Damian
Pierce.
The rookie,
so you really can't.
Running back. Exactly. So Damian Pierce, the rookie running back out of the Houston Texans. Brandon Cooks is no longer there. I know
Dalton Schultz is
they went and signed Dalton Schultz. But I'm talking last year, you couldn't. There's nobody on that offense that you could actually name with confidence that would be a contributor both as an individual on a team or from a fantasy football perspective. So when it comes to Bryce Young, I don't think you need if you don't draft a quarterback in fantasy football and you think I'm going to just ride with Bryce Young, I think you should temper your expectations there. But at this rate, anybody is better than the 4 quarterbacks they played with over the last 2 years. So, yeah, I think you absolutely should have high expectations, but not from a perspective of this guy's going to be a Pro Bowl, he's going to be an All-Pro, he's going to win a Super Bowl as a rookie. But he most definitely should be in the conversation of Offensive Rookie of the Year, both for the NFC and for the NFL.
So you need to be in the conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year. You mentioned the Panthers were a game away from the playoffs this past season. I mean, if Bryce Young doesn't get you over the hump with also the additions on this team as well, are you going to be like, this is a failure that, maybe the Falcons or the Saints got into the playoffs and the Panthers didn't? Because all it does is takes win your division.
First of all, the Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are not making the playoffs. They're not sniffing at the playoffs. I don't care. You can talk about the fact that the Falcons made some improvements in the draft, went out and got a Bijan Robinson. I still don't know who their quarterback is going to be. Is it going to be Desmond Ridder? I'm not sure.
It sounds like it's going to be.
Yeah, so those 2 teams are not going to sniff at the division. I think that the NFC South is a two-headed race between the New Orleans Saints and the Carolina Panthers. I don't think that if Bryce Young doesn't get him over the hump, that's an immediate failure. Because we're also not going to take into consideration injuries. We don't know if everybody stays healthy and plays through the entire 17-game season, and they miss the playoffs, I don't think it's going to be a disappointment for Bryce Young so much as a disappointment for the Carolina Panthers, because a lot of people, and forgive me for not remembering his name, wanted their associate or their interim head coach to take over instead of Frank Reich. And so
Steve Wilkes.
Steve Wilkes, yeah. So I think this is more, if they miss the playoffs this year, I think it's more of the failure falls more on the head of Frank Reich, more so than Bryce Young or anybody on this offense. But then again, they had a decent defense last year. They had a really good defense, not decent. And so it all depends. If the defense takes a step back, then what are we talking about here? But it doesn't fall on the head of Bryce Young. Bryce Young, he'll probably shoulder the blame, but he shouldn't, especially if he comes out and balls out like I expect him to.
I mean, we've been talking about how they stack this team in free agency. And you go up and trade for the guy that's supposed to lead your franchise. I mean, there's so much excitement in the Carolinas right now because you have a potential franchise quarterback. I feel like fans want to be able to see that. But, like you mentioned, our guys got to be healthy, like your South Carolina guy, J.C. Horn.
Yeah, I mean, listen, how many rookie quarterbacks have gone on to win Super Bowls in their first year or made Pro Bowls in their first year? Tom Brady didn't start as a rookie. Aaron Rodgers didn't start as a rookie.
You can easily get in the playoffs, though.
I mean, again, yeah, arguably, considering how close they were to the playoffs last year, it seems like they should be able to make the playoffs this year. But again, the same teams that Carolina played last year are not the same teams they're playing this year. And I know there's not a lot of love being shown at New Orleans right now, and Carolina is the quote unquote sexy pick to make. But listen, as someone rooting for the Panthers, I have all the faith in the world that New Orleans is going to be a good football team this year, a very good football team this year. So it wouldn't surprise me if Carolina missed the playoffs because of the Saints coming out the gate and being something. Listen, I see you shaking your head. Derek Carr.
Yeah, if you're watching on our YouTube through the Tobacco Red Sports Radio's YouTube channel, then you definitely see me shaking my head. That was New Orleans.
Again, listen, New Orleans.
Talk about a team who can't stay healthy.
Well,
Kamar can't stay healthy. Thomas can't stay healthy.
Yeah, Michael Thomas is your biggest question mark, but I think they've got enough pieces in New Orleans, along with Derek Carr. Derek Carr is a better quarterback than they've had the last 2 years.
Derek Carr couldn't get Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams to sniff the playoffs, and you think he's going to do it with Chris Olave?
Again, when you have the only option being Devontae Adams had a great season last year.
Yeah, and they still couldn't get the playoffs.
Listen, if you watch the Pro Bowl games, Derek Carr showed how talented he is as a quarterback. You got to remember, there was a few years ago before he got hurt in Oakland, before they moved to Vegas, Derek Carr was an MVP candidate. Derek Carr is a fine quarterback. He had one phenomenal season that led Oakland to the playoffs before he got hurt, and he was never the same quarterback. I think he needed a fresh start, and he gets that in New Orleans.
One phenomenal season. But he's not going to do that in New Orleans. Like, Grant, he went to a weaker division.
If he doesn't get hurt, we don't know what type of career trajectory he has. Maybe he builds up that injury. Maybe he's been sort of hesitant and I'm trying to think of the right word I want to use. Maybe he's been sort of conservative about what he wants to do because he doesn't know his physical limitations. And again, a part of it has to do with confidence. And he wasn't confident in Vegas anymore. He was happy to have Devontae Adams there, but that clearly didn't end well for Derek Carr. So he gets to be a new face in a new place in a division that is very winnable. So yeah, I mean, listen, Baker Mayfield's going to be the starting quarterback in Tampa Bay. That's going to show up.
Automatically eliminates Tampa from contention.
Yeah, exactly. And Desmond Ridder, who did not show signs of being a full-time starting quarterback last season, is going to be in Atlanta. So again, it's a two-headed race between New Orleans and Carolina. And I have faith that New Orleans is going to be a very good football team, as will be the Carolina Panthers.
I think if the Saints somehow win this division, it'll be a travesty based on, just looking at what the Panthers have done in free agency. I'm not trusting Derek Carr to lead the Saints to the playoffs when he had a top 10 running back, a top 3 wide receiver in the league last year, and just couldn't get over the hump in Vegas.
But Carolina didn't have either one of those. Christian McCaffrey was gone halfway through the season. They didn't have a top 10, top 20 wide receiver on that roster. So, like, how can you say that Bryce Young's got a better shot to make the playoffs without the weapons that New Orleans has been proven to have? Like, Chris Olave is going to be a great wide receiver in the league. If Michael Thomas can stay healthy, if Michael Thomas can stay healthy,
which he hasn't in the last 5 years.
I completely agree with you. I think part of it is because he knew the direction that the Saints were going to, and so maybe he wasn't as hurt as he was leading on, but he was acting like he was in pain. I don't think we're going to get a resurgence from Michael Thomas this year, but I think we're going to get a consistent Michael Thomas this year, some more so than we've gotten over the last 5 years. So again, I'm not here saying that the Saints are going to win the division, and I'm not saying if they do that it is a travesty that the Carolina Panthers didn't win it over the Saints. I'm just saying to temper your expectations because I wouldn't be surprised if it happened.
I'm going to throw something out here. I would not be surprised if Michael Thomas is not on the New Orleans Saints come week 1.
You think they're going to cut him?
I think if he doesn't show signs, he's either traded to a team that wants to gamble on him, or they're like, this guy, he's just not available.
I can see him getting traded for somebody who wants to take the chance on him, but I don't see him getting cut. And also, it depends on the play of Derek Carr. If Derek Carr comes in the preseason, comes in fall camp, and is slinging the ball around, hitting everybody that he needs to hit, playing the way that I know Derek Carr can play, then maybe Michael Thomas is more likely to want to be around. But when you know that you've got either Andy Dalton, which, Andy Dalton had a fine season last year, but he wasn't much better than Jameis Winston, who, even with LASIK surgery, couldn't hit a bag of crab legs from a boat in the ocean. So, and I'm glad that you got both of those references there. So anyway,
of course.
So listen, I'm with you. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Thomas was traded, but if Derek Carr starts slinging the ball around and it makes Michael Thomas excited, again, I'm not saying Michael Thomas is going to be a Pro Bowl or a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. But I think we could actually get some consistency out of Michael Thomas if he's excited about the quarterback that he's playing with. Now, if he gets hurt, he might as well consider him Greg Oden. Like, he could have been one of the best wide receivers in NFL history if it wasn't for his foot and his ankle and other body parts getting in the way.
Now we mentioned, you're liking the weapons in New Orleans. I'm liking the weapons in Carolina. Okay. Now, of course, there's no DeAndre Hopkins here. I feel like they could make a splash for a guy like D-Hop or, running back Dalvin Cook or Ezekiel Elliott. Those are some names that could be thrown out there. We've talked about this on the show. It's no surprise to you.
We don't want Zeke, man.
Yes, get Dalvin. You do.
Go get Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is better than Zeke, and he's still out there. Go get Dalvin Cook.
One of the two. Just to help with short yardage, but that's a topic for another time. Frank Wright made comments on 2 wide receivers, one being Terrace Marshall, saying that Terrace Marshall could be a big play guy for them this season with the rookie quarterback Bryce Young, and then rookie wide receiver Jonathan Mingo, who I was very, very high on. I honestly think this is going to be Carolina's best pick coming out of this draft, and that's including Bryce Young. And I'm still high on Bryce. He said Jonathan Mingo is one of the people who have stood out in the spring when they've ran practice. So when it comes to these guys, Mingo and Marshall, who do you expect to have the bigger year? Do you expect both to be contributors, and how much?
I mean, we've joked about it on the show. Carolina's got like 100,000 wide receivers on this team. I think
go get D-Hop.
You don't. Yeah. No. Let's go get D-Hop and let's go get Zeke and Dalvin Cook while we're
get all 3 of them. Why not?
That's so dumb. Listen, I'm glad that you're high on Mingo. I think he can be a nice new face.
He's a faster Dez Bryant. That's what people have said. He's a faster Dez Bryant.
Listen,
in terms of positioning himself, catching those 50-50 balls in the end, you guys have a really good receiver.
Listen, I like the prospect of him being that guy, and I can't think of the guy's name for the Jets that had a sort of a great rookie season.
Garrett Wilson.
That's it. I like the idea of Mingo being this year's Garrett Wilson. I like the idea that like there's not a lot of NFL film on him, so he can be that sort of rookie surprise wide receiver that everybody's talking about. Halfway through the season, Terrace Marshall was drafted as part of that high-flying, record-breaking, national title-winning offense with the LSU Tigers, thrown to by Joe Burrow. But unfortunately for Terrace Marshall, the best wide receivers to come out of that LSU Tigers locker room was Jamar Chase, who was partnered with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, and Justin Jefferson, who is a perennial Pro Bowl wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings.
So it's pretty fitting. It's pretty fitting. Terrace is just the third option anywhere he goes, right?
So I like the optimism, right? You don't want to go out as a coach and say, well, Terrace has got some work to do, right? You want to go out and say Terrace Marshall can be a big threat wide receiver. And you want people to worry about Mingo. Like, yeah, he's impressed in camp. He stood out in camp. But like, they're not talking about the other wide receivers on that roster. Like, they want people to think about Mingo and Marshall. And to your point about Michael Thomas in New Orleans, it wouldn't surprise me if Terrace Marshall didn't finish the season on this Carolina Panthers roster. Especially if he's not, I mean, he's in year 3, year 4, whatever it is. And if Terrace Marshall comes out and just is not the wide receiver that they drafted him to be, then this is the time that we decide, okay, it's time to cut ties and move on. Kind of like what you were talking about with J.C. Horn a few weeks ago. Like, not with J.C. Horn. This is with Terrace Marshall because he's been healthy. And granted, he hasn't had a good quarterback to throw him the football. But it's also been year 3, year 4. Like, you're going to have to be productive. You're going to have to be a guy that defenses worry about. And unfortunately, I've not seen anything out of Terrace Marshall that would lead me to believe that he is a serious threat on this offense and that he's going to be a consistent producer for this offense. I like guys that have been around. You're starting to change my mind about Mingo as far as being, I talked about Bryce Young being an offensive rookie of the year candidate. Maybe Mingo is an offensive rookie of the year candidate. So, but Mingo isn't a candidate without the play of Bryce Young. So, I like the idea of Mingo being a contributor. I don't think he's going to start really breaking out until halfway through the season. Marshall, I don't see breaking out at all. Unfortunately, I think Marshall's time in Carolina is close to an end. I know they're really excited about him, and I hope I'm wrong because I like Terrace Marshall. I liked the pick when they drafted him, but I haven't seen enough from Terrace Marshall to lead me to believe that he is going to be a household name for the Carolina Panthers.
So I mentioned this, I believe, on Cody Lashney. He does the Embrace Debate. He also does the Carolina Cat Chronicles. I mentioned this on a panel of like, maybe Terrace Marshall is like the odd guy out when you start looking at this receiver room, because Marshall's, at least for the last couple years, and Grant, you can say, oh, who's been throwing him the ball? They still don't look like good stats. I mean, he had 17 catches his rookie year. He had 28 his second year. Both years under 500 yards. He's only had one career touch. This is crazy. When you're looking at a receiver going into his third year and you have one receiving touchdown and 2 fumbles, that's not a good ratio. I mean,
you're dropping the numbers to back everything that I said. So I'm taking that as a win.
Usually we don't agree either.
No.
So this is weird territory for us to be arguing.
Shower. Yeah, I need a shower after this. This is gross.
Honestly, you smell pretty far away. I could smell you all the way from Houston. Okay, I know.
I could say so many things, but this is a family show. So
this is a family show.
I'm gonna let it slide.
It's the Cat Cave. All family welcome in to the Keep Pound Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. And yeah, I'm really high on Mingo. I think you guys have a really, really good player. And I was hoping he would go to where Dez spent most of his career, but yeah, looking at, there's going to be somebody left out of this receiver room. Whether it's not going to be Thielen, it's not going to be Mingo. Is it going to be Chark, Marshall, Chenault, Shi Smith, Demir Bird? Who's it going to be that's left out of this room that we don't know yet?
I think they're going to keep either Shi Smith or Demir Bird for special teams alone. They might keep both of them because they had really high expectations. Well, not high expectations because he wasn't a high round draft pick, but Shi Smith has shown burst. And this isn't me being a Gamecock homer, but he's shown little spurts throughout his career that, he's got it. Like he was a shifty wide receiver in college. He was at times maybe a big play guy in college. A la, again, you wouldn't know Pharaoh Cooper. I'm not trying to compare him to Deebo Samuel, but they came from that same offense. And when Deebo left, Shi kind of took that spot. So I think one of the other, Shi or Demir, make it. I'd like to see both of them make it selfishly, but I don't see both of them making it. I said earlier on the show, not this show, but in an earlier episode, that I like the prospect of DJ Chark being a big play receiver, 6'4", speedy guy, big frame. If he can stay healthy, I think DJ Chark makes the roster, and he turns out to be the wide receiver everybody wanted Terrace Marshall to be. I don't know about Laviska Shenault. But yeah, like you said, there will be somebody left out. And at this rate, I think we're looking at Terrace Marshall being that guy.
Yeah, it very well could be. We got just a few more minutes left here in the Cat Cave. And Ryan, we'd be remiss without recognizing yesterday was 4th of July, which for Americans, football and Independence Day are two big things here in the U.S. Who would you celebrate the 4th of July with? I'm going to give you 3 former players or coaches that you could celebrate the 4th of July with.
Man, I'm gonna celebrate with Peyton Manning because I think his family cookouts are probably a good time. And
whoa, time. I'm limiting this to Panthers, by the way.
Just Panthers.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a Panther podcast. Well, you're wearing a Panther jersey.
You said former players and coaches, so I thought you were going.
We're a Panther podcast, though. We could cover this on like tap outs and touchdowns or out of pocket or something.
All right, I'm gonna go.
That was a Mick Foley plug, by the way.
I'm gonna go. I hate
either.
Give me. So I'm gonna start off with Jake Delhomme. He's got the Cajun to him. He's from Nolens, so he's probably got some good cooking advice or some good cooking influence. So I'm gonna go Jake Delhomme based on his Cajun influences on the menu alone. Man, this is hard, man. You really put me on the spot. Because I had an answer because I was gonna throw out Andy Reid because I bet he knows how to eat, but he was a former Panther. So give me Jake Delhomme. I'll go Luke Kuechly. I mean, Kuechly seems like a cool guy that like you could like shoot off fireworks with, have a good old cookout and hang out with. So give me Luke Kuechly. Give me Muhsin Muhammad as my third.
Okay.
Yeah, a legend in Carolina. Obviously, he spent a little time in Chicago, but the basketball floss that he would do after touchdown celebrations. It feels like if you want to have a good time and eat some really good food, I feel like Muhsin Muhammad is that guy that can keep you entertained. So yeah, those would be my 3: Delhomme, Kuechly, and Muhsin Muhammad.
I mean, that's an all right list, So,
what's your list then? That's an all. Oh yeah, that's all right. That's an all right name. Like what you got?
You had to put me on the spot.
No, don't call me out. Don't call me out and expect not to get called out yourself.
Well, I'm gonna go. Let me go this route. Let me go D'Angelo Williams. D'Angelo's a wrestling fan, so me and him could talk wrestling the entire time, and I wouldn't be bored at all whatsoever. I've always I got like 3 more in my mind. I don't know which one. Give me Thomas Davis. Give me Thomas Davis, you know. Walter Payton Man of the Year, quality kind of guy. Lives in Charlotte, you know. I've heard really good stories about people who have met him too. I would love to have a barbecue 4th of July with Thomas Davis. And I would give an honorable mention to John Casey, only because I've worked with his daughter at the YMCA camp.
That's
my
awesome.
first summer. Yeah. Never got to meet him, so I'm kind of like salty about that a little bit, but I'd put him as an honorable mention, you know.
I'm in the minority. I think they should retire his number, but that's just me.
Hey, if there's a Panther round, like obviously you'd have to get Steve Smith, Luke Kuechly, Greg Olson, those guys. He would be on the list at least. But since I'm not inviting Casey, okay, I'm gonna invite Tobacco Road's own Jay Stu, Jonathan Stewart. Like, you get Jay Stu and D'Angelo in the same room too. Yeah, sign me up.
I didn't want to suck up to our fellow podcaster. So
I will. I will.
I did have better seats to Monday Night Raw than him at one time. So
so you're not kissing up. You're just slandering. Wow. Good job. Good job. You're going to get canceled.
I would love to have Jonathan Stewart on the show at some point. But I don't know if I'd be able to contain my fanboy-ishness. Like, I'd have to learn how to be a professional really quick.
Oh,
I would turn into the Chris Farley show really quickly. Like, and if you don't know the Chris Farley show, then ignore this. But like, Chris Farley had a show, like his own segment. I know we're late, so I'll try to make this quick. But Chris Farley had his own show on Saturday Night Live, the Chris Farley Show, and he would have guests on, and he would just sit with them. Like, remember that time when you and D'Angelo Williams were like the best, the awesome running backs? That was awesome. That was the Chris Farley show. I would turn into that. I would turn into Chris Farley really quick.
That was awesome.
That was awesome.
Speaking of awesome, the Cat Cave, always an awesome time. Exit the Cat Cave until next week, but listen to more content by myself, Michael, yourself, Ryan, on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel, and more Carolina-centric podcasts on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, powered by the Fans First Sports Network. We're out of time. Thank you guys so much for listening into the Cat Cave. And until then, adios. See you next week.